Most change begins with discomfort, with noticing something that doesn't work, with asking a question that others have stopped asking. I'm Saskia Falcon. Welcome to the Odds in Our Favour, a News 24 Good News podcast brought to you by Old Mutual Wealth. This is a podcast about South Africans who see challenges not as dead ends, but as invitations to create something different. South Africa has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, consistently recording the highest unemployment rate on the continent. And for women living in under-resourced communities, finding stable employment can feel almost impossible. Yet every day across our country, there are entrepreneurs quietly proving that business can do far more than generate a profit. Today's episode begins with a simple question. What if we measured the success of a business not only by its profits, but by the number of lives that it changes? That's the philosophy behind the Khayelitsha Cookie Company, a business that has grown from a small township bakery into an internationally recognized brand, creating employment for women, supplying major retailers, and most recently, taking a proudly South African product into British Airways flights. But this isn't a story about cookies. It's a story about purpose and about what happens when business becomes a force for social change. To share more on this, we welcome the MD of Khayelitsha Cookie Company, Audrey Williams. Audrey, welcome to the Odds in Our Favour.
Good morning. Thank you so much for hosting us. What an incredible honor and privilege to be on your show.
Now, before we talk about the business, I'd really like to talk about the decision that changed everything. I mean, you had a really successful corporate career, and you could have continued climbing that ladder. But instead, you walked away from that kind of certainty and you chose something a lot more uncertain. What were you searching for and what motivated that decision?
The motivation behind the decision was our church did an outreach where we went to the Brooklyn Chest TB Hospital every second Saturday to give our community service and literally assisting the nurses to play with the toddlers, take them out the cots, and give them some human interaction. And going back every second week, some of the children we formed bonds with ended up passing away. And that became a gut-wrenching experience. And I started asking the hard questions to the personnel and the nursing staff, who informed me that majority of these kids are there at Brooklyn Chest because of malnutrition. That is the core reason for their little bodies not being able to fight this horrible disease. And we went in without masks, without any protective clothing, yet we never contracted the disease, and we worked with 60, 70 kids who had this tuberculosis. And that started breaking my heart. And I must say, what started as a feel-good project to go there every second Saturday became gut-wrenching, not knowing if the children you formed a bond with is going to be there or not. And one specific Saturday morning, I never used to go into the baby ward. I firmly believed a baby can break if you hold the baby. And the nurses gave me this small little baby, and her name was Nolotando. And they said to me, Audrey, if this baby girl's not going to drink 15 milliliters of milk now, you know what the repercussions are going to be. We're going to have to tube her, and you know that she's not going to survive. And sorry, I can't talk about this without not getting emotional, but that broke my heart so much. Sitting with that little baby girl, praying over her life. It took 2 hours for her to drink that 15 milliliters of milk. And I mean, she didn't have to get tubed, but I formed such a big bond with this little baby girl at the end of the day. And every second week, she would respond to my laughter. I saw all of her milestones getting reached every second Saturday when we went there. And that's where I decided, you know what, I can no longer form part of a corporate where the beneficiaries are shareholders, sometimes international shareholders, while so many of our kids die due to malnutrition. And it's also where I realized that 1 in every 5 of our children who end up in hospital in South Africa under the age of 5 died due to malnutrition being the main cause. That is statistics that is shocking. It's actually increased since then. And you can no longer live your life where you benefit financially, yet children are dying around you and you're doing nothing. And that's where I gave up my corporate career and joined Khayelitsha Cookies, where we knew that every woman we employ is a woman who cannot read, write, or speak English. It is women who cannot earn an income. That is the poorest of the poorest that you can get. That is the households that go without food and a meal most days of their lives. And that is why I decided, you know what? We need to join this business. We need to grow this business. We need to employ as many women as we possibly can, because every woman that we employ means 5 to 7 dependents don't form part of that statistics.
So then you joined Khayelitsha Cookie Company, but it wasn't all just smooth sailing. I mean, you joined as an employee, and then you became a partner in the business. Tell us a little bit about that story, about how it transitioned from being an employee at the Khayelitsha Cookie Company to then actually owning the business with your partner, Eunice.
So it was a difficult journey for us, very difficult. We couldn't replicate baking by machine with baking by hand like we do it. So the cost effect is much greater. So you're looking at a 30% extra additional cost by producing by hand versus a machine-baked cookie. Yet in the industry, we had to be competitive in a machine-baked priced cookie to give to our end clientele. And that became very difficult to manage. So by 2013, the company already accumulated 2.5 million rand in debt. The two directors who owned this business, Tim Leher and Tom Thiessen, they carried the losses through their existing small little business, also not a rich business. But they sowed so many years of hard work with me into that business. And Tim actually said to me, Audrey, the day we employed you, we knew that we had to play our part in Khayelitsha Cookies to hand it over to you, but Khayelitsha Cookies was actually always yours. And 2013, they called me into a meeting, and I joke because they gave 1 box of tissues on the table. I still buy 2 boxes of tissues every time I go and do my groceries because 1 box was not enough. And the financial director informed me that this business is going to close down. So I cried my heart out, came home, prayed about the situation, and God gave me a verse in Leviticus 26, verse 10. The next morning I went to them, still can't tell you what I said in that proposal that I did to them and the business plan I handed in. But after the meeting, the director asked me, do you have 1 rand? And I said to him, yes, I do. And he said, give it to me. And I took out the 1 rand out of my wallet and I gave it to him. And he said, congratulations, you're the new owner of this business. So I took over 2.5 million rand in debt. But there's another beautiful story to Khayelitsha Cookies. These directors set up the sales agreement that if we can pay back the debt, when we can pay it back. But should the business close down, they would actually not take me to court to insist on the other money. And where do you get that in today's life? Where they literally lost that money sowing it into the business. Yet they were prepared to actually draw up this contract to say, if you can, pay us back. If you can't, then there we go. And still till today, the months that we can pay them back, we pay them back. It's this absolute relationship of trust that we've got. And I think that's another amazing story in the industry because we're so used to everything being like in writing, legal, and you have to fight legal, where people forget sometimes the beauty of a genuine trust relationship and how much more that actually benefits small businesses. So if it wasn't for them sowing into the business in that first few years, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to grow to where it was today. And I must also say it's 2 of my mentors that I go to very often. So poor Tim, when I need advice, he's the first one that I call, and he's also one of that very straight, he shoots straight. So he tells you exactly how things are. So I'm very blessed to still have them in our lives. And yes, we just under 800,000 still that we owe them of the 2.5 million. And gracefully, when COVID hit, our business went through a very bad slump, and it took us 4 years to get back to break even again. And they allowed us to skip that few years. So we've got an additional 2 years to repay that loan.
And you have a business partner, Eunice. I mean, what makes you guys such good partners?
Eunice recently retired. So, yes, literally 2 months ago, Eunice retired. So I feel empty. It feels like my lifelong buddy and best friend is gone. So her absence is truly felt in this business. But for that years in 2013 to 2026 when she retired, the beauty of our relationship is my weaknesses was her strengths and her weaknesses was my strengths. So we could always run this business effectively together. And like a family, because I see her as my mom, with any family, you're going to have fights. You're going to disagree. You're not going to see things eye to eye. But we always managed to get to a conclusion. And what bounded us was our drive and the passion of which this business stands for. So many a time, our business stood at the door of closing. We were technically liquidated already. There was months that we didn't know how we're going to pay overhead costs. Still till today, weekly, we beg, plead, steal, borrow, you name it, just to pay all the weekly wages because we bake at less than 0.1% net profit. So it remains a cutthroat business to run. However, when you run a business with passion, you will find a solution to make it work. And for us, that passion, when we didn't know what to do anymore to keep this business standing, we called it the staircase of hopelessness/hope. We would sit at that staircase. We would cry our hearts out. We would literally sit there sobbing, just holding one another. And as strange as it may sound, Eunice and myself repainted that factory floors ourselves many times. So the two directors like us, we bake, we pack, we clean, we paint, we do whatever it takes to run that business. And my little kids, the one night, ran through the factory when it was freshly painted, and their two little footsteps were in front of that staircase. We never painted over that footsteps. So we sat at the bottom of that staircase and we looked at the little two footsteps and we would go, you know what, we're building this business for the next generation. We're building it because kids need us at the end of the day. So we have to find solutions. So as strange as it may sound, that two little footsteps and that staircase is where so many business breakthroughs happened because of our passion towards the woman, our passion towards job creation, and our passion towards putting food on table. For us, the gut-wrenching reality is we and our business that's currently employing just short of 100 women is not even a drop in the ocean compared to the problem that we have in South Africa. But my heart's desire has always been that there is more businesses like ourselves that can actually just focus on job creation, keep things as manual as possible. And I know a lot of the corporates and a lot of the large companies and a lot of the government incentives are actually aimed at automation because we need to be able to compete worldwide with our products. Yet when you look at pockets of funding that's available, none of it is for people and to employ people. And what does our country need more than anything else? Job creation. We need to invest in our people.
I mean, there must be a tension between staying true to your values and growing. Talk to us about that very quickly. To be
Definitely
so intentionally, not just employing people, but employing women.
Yes. So we've got 9 men because there is certain things we as women think we can do everything. And my poor husband, he has to deal with me on that. But he's a rock star when it comes to support. But there is certain jobs that women are just not physically able to do, like carrying 20 kilograms of flour around, heavy boxes, lifting, doing all the heavy lifting, the trolleys, the pans. So there is 9 men within our organization. However, the challenges around automation and getting more profitable, I always get faced with it because people will go, but you can then take better care of the people you currently employ. You can offer them a medical aid and a pension fund and a provident fund and funeral plan, which we currently cannot do because the money is just not there to do it. So it is a difficult situation to face and it's a dilemma. However, for us, remaining true to our core has always been the main reason for the existence of the business. About 5 years ago, we contracted a large like retail contract, where we had to make a plan and bring in a small portion of automation. But again, they had to build a machine for us to keep it as manual as possible. So my staff physically feed this thing manually. Again, typical Audrey, going against anything that's mainstream and going, I'm staying true to the core of what this business is all about. So yeah, I mean, the electricians and the engineers that had to build this thing for us was like, lady, you can buy a much better machine for the same price off shelf. And I said to him, yeah, but it's not going to use the same amount of people that we need to run this machine to actually keep the job creation and true to our core. So yeah, it is a very, very difficult scenario to be faced with. Many people, many accountants, many mentors that we work with, even our own external auditors who does our books annually go, just part automate. Keep a part of your factory true to the core, but the rest just automate. But no, I dig my heels in.
You are uncompromising. It's incredible.
Wealth is about more than just numbers. It's about what you're shaping, your ambitions, your priorities, your legacy. That's why Old Mutual Wealth partners with skilled financial planners to bring the expertise of a leading wealth manager to your strategy. They help you make sense of both local and global opportunities, offering clear strategic insight so you can make confident decisions, whether you're building your wealth, protecting it, or shaping your financial future. Take your wealth further.
But even with all of that, I mean, one of the biggest milestones for the company has been this wonderful deal that you've secured to supply international markets, the British Airways deal. I mean, tell us a little bit about how that came about.
So that came about with a program that we enrolled in to help business owners really export your products to the international market. And part of that was a trade show that we attended in Johannesburg. And they assisted the South African government, actually flew in quite a few, like international buyers. And one of these buyers was an amazing lady called Hiram from Tikit. So we were so despondent going to this Indaba because we had 2 meetings out of like 40 international buyers. And didn't matter what we did, we just couldn't get meetings with the rest. So I left that show feeling like I wasted government's money, and like we didn't do the best that we could, but the other people literally didn't want to see us. But it took this one lady, Hiram, and she listened and she looked at us and she said, I met my goal for coming to South Africa is to see a company like you. She had many meetings with other suppliers. We were the first ever South African company that got invited to a specialized trade show in London that's hosted annually called Tikit, Meet the Buyer by Tikit, where they invite the key decision makers and they present only new products to them. So you get one opportunity to go to that show. And you literally set up B2B meetings and you only allowed 11 meetings at this Tikit show. And the very first meeting we had was with a company called Jackie Out the Box. They supply British Airways with this delicious shortbread that they pack like in a little box. And they listened to our sales pitch and the lady looked at me and she said, the deal is yours. If you can produce it to me at this cost, here's our packaging, here's our box, deal is guaranteed. So I went to the show hosts and I said to them, I just got our first deal. Here's the quantities, here's the price, here's the rest. And she said, no deals get concluded at the show. It's only the base, the starting point. So don't get too excited. So I laughed and I said to her, but it's a confirmed deal. And she was like, no, it can't be. They've never had this on the show. And this show is 40 years old already. And then we had our second meeting. And again, we get the deal. This company also supplies British Airways. And we were like, no ways. 2 in a row. We had the rest of the meetings, which didn't transpire into actual, orders. But that's how we contracted the deals, supplying British Airways through 2 suppliers that is based in London, in the UK, and that's how we got on board with these deals. And I mean, again, like the Jackie Out the Box, she spoke to us and said that, I mean, she doesn't just give someone a deal. Yet, I mean, we're growing. We're actually growing at this moment in time. So it is truly, truly, truly amazing. And I mean, Mile One, which is the other company, I mean, for them to go to a British Airways to say, we're not going to supply you with a local product. We're actually going to supply you with an imported product. Because like South Africa, the rest of the world is local first, support local. So here we are supplying British Airways with the South African cookies. So for me, it was amazing that we got that opportunity, because it didn't just stick with them to make the final decisions. British Airways had to give the go-ahead for that product to actually go online. So that's how we contracted that deal.
A deal like this, I mean, talk to me about impact. A deal like this, what does this mean actually in terms of jobs created, families fed, communities sustained?
So we currently supply 2 pallets per month that gets exported through to the UK, and that equates to 12 new employees. That equates to over 70 full tummies every month or every night. And that is how we measure our success. I mean, I laugh when I do the meetings with my sales team. We don't drive the next 1,000 Rand order, 2,000 Rand order, 10,000 Rand order per month. We drive for the next 1,000 cookies per day order per month, because we know that equates to one more person that we can employ. That's how we structure our entire business. That is our secret ingredient, if I can put it like that. That we strive for that next 1,000 cookies that we can sell per day, because we know that equates to another job.
Yeah, I think that's quite incredible, because you're talking impact now. You're measuring impact. You're not exactly measuring profit, which I think is so key. I want to ask you about, because you've been in small business now for a while, what do you think we're getting wrong in South Africa? Because there's so many great ideas, so many entrepreneurs out there, but they don't necessarily have the access to funding, to markets. I mean, what do you think we're getting wrong in South Africa when it comes to helping entrepreneurs thrive?
So I'm personally mentor 4 entrepreneurs every year, and it's not the same ones. Things we get wrong. First of all, an entrepreneur does not have an access to key specialized employees, like a lawyer, like a food safety consultant, like an accountant. That type of speciality roles that large corporate often take for granted, and they've got whole divisions running that. Marketing is where small businesses desperately need assistance. And I mean, on many a platform where I get the opportunity to speak to a couple of large corporates, my request to them is take on 5 entrepreneurs every year. Allow them 3 hours. I'm talking about 3 hours of your accounting team's time per month, 3 hours of your legal team, 3 hours of your marketing team, and don't let them just mentor and guide people. Allow that entrepreneur to come in with what he needs for that month. And you physically sit and you help him draw up the contracts. You physically help him read through the contracts. Because again, in the industry, people will bait entrepreneurs out. If you don't understand the legal contract, it can be the end of your business. I've physically been there. I've learned it the hard way. When you look at marketing, you don't specifically know how to, do, for argument's sake, a Facebook post that is relevant, because you just select and Facebook automatically does it for you, but you don't get return orders. It is because you need to understand your clientele. You need to do a specific campaign. You need that guidance to do a small video that would, capture the heart of the people who would support that business. So that is where we're seriously going wrong with assisting entrepreneurs in South Africa, because that platform is not there. There is many, many small initiatives that government uses, which is fantastic, where entrepreneurs can come in and they help them to get the registration process, going to register your company and all the rest. But after that registration process has taken place, there is no assistance for these entrepreneurs. And you end up paying, I call it, the most expensive school fees you can ever think of, because you make so many mistakes, because you don't have access to that pool of people who really know the ins and outs of business. Secondly, which I tell entrepreneurs, is you can have the best product and the best story ever. If you cannot follow it up by being the best supplier with customer service delivery, quality, consistency, and price, your product's not going to go anywhere. That is another step that is missing, that is critical. Because a lot of these entrepreneurs, it's like we call it in netball, like you always want to be the goal shooter. You're the one that wants to get all the fame by actually sinking all that goals because that's who people see. However, that try-line vision, like with rugby, the try-line vision where you're so blinded by yourself that you want to go and score that try, you end up losing the ball because the person next to you would have been in an ideal position to score that try. And what we're trying to tell these entrepreneurs is don't just go, you get this huge deal for argument's sake for 2,000, first 2,000 order through a large corporate. You end up only delivering 500 because you chewed off more than what you can actually do because you had try-line vision. Don't do that because that would be your first and your last order and it will close your company. Rather do what you can and under-promise and over-deliver, not the flip side.
Audrey, what's next for the Khayelitsha Cookie Company?
What's next is our farming project, where we want to train youth and set up a tunnel business for each youth who finishes school who does not have the opportunity to go to tertiary education, and teach them how to farm in that tunnel. And each tunnel will have its own little separate business unit that we can train the new entrepreneurs on income, expenditure, management, and they will have a profit share in each one of these tunnels. And the reason for that is we secured large corporate offtake agreements for whatever we're going to farm on this farm, which includes your spinach, your butternut, and it's also raw ingredients we actually use in our own cookies. So we can then purchase from these youth farmers. On that farm, there will also be netball courts, the first of its kind in South Africa, where it's outdoor size netball courts, but it's actually built indoors. So it assists the youth in our current Western Cape area where so many matches rain out because kids, like when it rains, you can't play netball. And our own national Protea team does not have a court to call their own. The heart behind this is that we set up 7 courts and a main pavilion that can house up to 5,000 people. That our Protea team, our national Protea team, has got a home to call their own. That we can train youth, that we can train skills to girls, as well as girls who are very good at netball, who does not get the opportunity to go to tertiary education. Train them up as the next coaches, train them up as the next umpires. So for the last 5 years, I've actually been coaching netball pro bono. It's a sport I love. I've got a daddy-daughter team that plays where I trained up dads to play with their daughters. And I'm also a provincial coach. So I definitely see the need for this. That will bring in so much tourism into Western Cape and into South Africa, when we can host international events, where we can host Africa Cup challenges. And we can actually do it with schools, where we can start a tournament that we play, like with my daughter who play top schools now in Johannesburg. The top teams actually play against all the Africa countries here in our own hometown in South Africa. So we need to raise the money to secure the farmland because we cannot get funding for the land. We secured funding to put up the infrastructure at interest-free loans, but we need the public's assistance now. We need large corporates to donate, and it's registered as an NPO, that land will never belong to an individual. It will be there for the next how many generations. So if you've got money to give away towards a non-profit organization with a Section 18A certificate, please support our project. We really need your help to raise the funds for that farm.
How much money are you guys looking for?
We need to raise 5.5 million to secure the land. And then each netball court, you're looking at 1.7 million rand to erect. But we are prepared that if a corporate says, I will sponsor a netball court, it's branded in their own branding. All the live streaming taking place will be their branding. And netball is the 3rd largest growing sport worldwide. Even America is starting to play netball. So it would be a very good marketing investment for any large corporate out there.
Audrey, thank you so much for sharing your and the Khayelitsha Cookie Company story with us today. We often think changing a country or creating jobs requires billion-rand investments or bold policy decisions. But I think this conversation has reminded us that sometimes change just begins with something a lot simpler, and that's choosing purpose over comfort. A business that refuses to measure success only in profit. So one opportunity that becomes another job, which means another family is supported and another future is rewritten. The Khayelitsha Cookie Company reminds us that business can be about more than just products. It can be about people. And perhaps that's actually the sweetest success story of all. Until next time, remember, every positive change starts with someone that's willing to ask a different question. And when opportunity is shared, the odds can really be in our favor. To follow the Khayelitsha Cookie Company's story, to buy their cookies, or invest in the next iteration of the business, head to kcco.co.za.